Hi, welcome to Intro to Marketing. Today we are going to be learning about buyer behavior. So let's get started. We're going to start out with a class exercise, and I want you to write down your answers in your notebook in the beginning, and we're actually going to come back to this class exercise at the end of this lecture so you can compare and contrast your answers. So first, I want you to think about the last time you purchased a laptop, a tablet, or a cell phone, honestly, any big ticket item, and answer the following questions regarding your purchase experience. 1, describe the steps you went through during your buying process. 2, list the factors, cultural, social, personal, or psychological, that influenced your purchase. And overall, what made you choose your product and why. So I'm going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes to work on that. And when you're ready to go ahead and start the video again. So today's objectives, we are going to understand consumers' level of involvement with product and describe consumer behaviors, recognize stages of consumer buying decision process, explore situational influences of consumer buying process, and define the buyer decision process. So we started with this model of buyer behavior, and the factors or this figure shows the marketing and other stimuli that enters our black box and essentially activates our buyer response. So when we go into the environment of our purchase decisions, the environment is the product, the price, the place, and the promotion of a product. And there's also factors that go into that stimuli, and they could be economic, technological, social, or cultural. And then we get into the buyer's black box. The buyer's black box is essentially an enigma to marketers. So marketers must figure out what's in the buyer's black box, and that includes the whats, the wheres, the whens of the consumer buying behavior that can be measured. And it's very difficult for marketers to figure out the whys of the buying behavior, and that's essentially why it's called the black box. So marketers spend a lot of time and money trying to figure out what makes the customer tick. So next we have the buyer's response. Once the marketers can figure out Once the buyers can figure out what the buying attitudes and preferences are, they can market accordingly and be able to understand what the buyer buys, where, when, and how much, and also have some brand engagement and relationship with the buyer and be able to essentially give a long-lasting relationship and make sure that you're continually keeping those customers and potentially adding new ones. So every buyer has factors that influence our behavior. What we buy and how we buy it is influenced by these four factors. So we have cultural, social, personal, and psychological. And we're going to go into those one by one. So first, we're going to talk about cultural. So cultural deals with culture, subculture, and social class. So our culture is a set of basic values, perceptions, wants, and behaviors learned by an individual from family and other important institutions. Culture can be a religious background, it can be your heritage, where you come from, all of that, and that's deeply embedded into who we are. Next, we have subculture. The subculture is a group of people with shared value systems based on a common life experience or situation. In the picture here, we have a 1970s hippie movement, free love and peace. And subcultures, though, in a more now sense, could be your classroom, it could be your sports teams, your clubs on campus, it could be your family, your friends, that all of you have a shared experience or situation in that sense. And lastly, we have the social class. And that's society's relatively permanent and ordered division of whose members share similar values, interests, and behaviors. Now, social class is also referred to as economic class, and we have low, middle, and high economic classes. And marketers are going to pick and choose those people on who to market to, because you wouldn't necessarily market a high-end expensive item to someone who who is in a lower class who can't afford it. So that's wasting your money advertising to that type of social class. So your money would most likely go to an upper class buyer. So next we have a social factor. So our social factors are groups and social networks, family, and roles and statuses. So there's actually 6 categories in social factors. So first we have groups, and groups have a direct influence to which a person belongs to, and that could be a membership group. And reference groups serve as a direct or indirect point of comparison or reference informing a person's attitudes or behaviors. And lastly, there's an aspirational group into which the individual wishes to belong. So your groups can be your friends, it could be your club, your sports teams, it could be anyone that you continually hang out around, or how aspirational groups was, it's a group that you wish to be a part of. So next we have opinion leaders. An opinion leader is a person within a reference group who, because of social skills or knowledge, personality, or other characteristics, exerts social influence on others. Opinion leaders are often referred to as influencers or leading adopters. So buzz marketing essentially is what these influencers are a part of, and that's when you enlist or create opinion leaders to serve as brand ambassadors who spread the word about the company's products. We're often influenced by influencers on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, even Snapchat, and now we have a social platform of TikTok coming up, of being influenced by these people to buy certain products. Next, we have a word of mouth influence, and this refers to the impact of personal words and recommendations of trusted friends, associates, or consumers of recommendations of trusted friends, associates, and other consumers on buying behavior. Rather than leaving it to chance, marketers are going to create positive conversations about their brands. And so when you have a positive experience about a product, you're often going to tell a couple people around you. That goes as the opposite too. If you have a negative reaction to a product, you're often going to tell more people about the negative reaction than the positive one. So if you do have a positive reaction with the product, tell more people. It's always a good thing to do. Next, we have online social networks, and these are online communities where people socialize or exchange information and opinions. A great example of this is when you go to Instagram and you ask your friends, hey, where should I go to eat tonight? And a couple of friends will recommend a couple of places, and you'll often choose from that list. And so that's a good way to how people influence you and how social networks influence you of where to go. And next we have family, and family members can be a strong influence of buyer behavior. Marketers are often interested in the roles of parents, children, significant relationships, and grandparents, cousins. They want to know what influences each of us and how strong our family roles are within buying factors. And lastly, a person's position in each group can be defined by a role or status, and people choose products appropriate to their roles and status. And what that means is it kind of goes back to our social class or economic standing in society, but also comes to our role in society as well. So if you were a construction worker versus an office worker, clothing-wise, you're buying two different things. So if you were a construction worker, you're buying work boots and overalls, but if you were in an office setting, you'd be buying blazers and nice shoes and dress pants. So what marketers are advertising to you is different than what the person who works in an office would be. So next we're going to move on to personal factors. Personal factors are your age and life cycle, your occupation, your economic situation, your lifestyle, and personality and self-conception. So buyer's decisions are influenced by personal characteristics of the buyer. A person's occupation affects the goods and services bought. Well, marketers try to identify the occupational groups that have an above average interest in their product and services. A company can specialize in making products needed by a given occupational group. Again, back to what we just talked about, what your role in society is, your occupation is going to determine the clothes that you buy, the car that you drive, even the coffee cup you buy sometimes. And so next is your age and family lifestyle. Your age is going to determine so much. If you were a child, kids' cuisine dinners are going to be advertised to you at a time where you would be watching television. But as parents, though, your commercials change, correct? So buying is shaped by the stage of the family life cycle of the age in which your family is going to be at. So while kids' cuisine may be advertised to the child and also the parent, because the parent's most likely doing the buying, once we've hit maybe the 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. mark, commercials have completely changed and have taken over to a more adult realm. So next is a person's economic situation, and this will affect his or her store and product choices most likely. And marketers tend to watch trends in spending, personal income, savings, interest rate. The economy will change at all times, and so that also will change how products are delivered and created. Next is lifestyle. A lifestyle is a person's pattern of living as expressed in their psychographics, and involves measuring consumers' major AIO dimensions, which are your activities, interests, and opinions. The lifestyle concept can help marketers understand changing consumer values and how they affect buyer behavior. So if your lifestyle was more active than sedentary, you're often looking at buying athletic gear or looking at vacations that tend to have hiking or biking or mountain climbing. But if you live a more sedentary lifestyle, maybe you're looking at books or art or movies, something that's less active. And so your lifestyle is really going to influence what you buy and also what marketers market to you. And lastly, we have this personality and self-conception. So personality refers to the unique psychological characteristics that distinguish a person or a group. It can be useful in analyzing consumer behavior for a certain product or brand choices. And then you come to a person's self-concept, and that's also made up by the use of marketers, but the idea is that people's possessions contribute to and reflect to their identities. So if your personality was, maybe you were on a more mature lifestyle, what you would be buying would be different than someone who had more of a loose, laid-back personality. If that made sense, I would say, like, in my personality, the things that I'm buying is on the more mature end because of where I am in my college life and where I am as an adult. But maybe other people aren't necessarily looking at that lifestyle or that personality choice yet, and so they're still buying things that don't advance to an adult personality, essentially. So next, we're going to look at psychological factors. So psychological involves motivation, perception, learning, and beliefs and attitudes. So when we look at psychological factors, we have motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitudes. A motivation or drive is a need that is sufficiently pressing to direct a person to seek satisfaction. Many companies employ teams of psychologists, anthropologists, and other social scientists to carry out motivational research. Motivation, again, like your lifestyle choices, if your motivation is to lose weight after a New Year's resolution, what your buying purchases are going to look like are more athletic gear, gym memberships, etc. So your motivation, it drives your buyer behaviors in that sense. And next, you have perception. And perception is the process by which people select, organize, and interpret information to form a meaningful picture of the world. First, in perception, we have selective distortion. Selective distortion describes the tendency of people to interpret information in a way that will support what they already know. An example of that would be if I owned an iPhone and I only told people that the iPhone was amazing, but I had never tried a Google Pixel or a Galaxy or an Android. I don't know anything about those, but I only know about the iPhone. So I have a distorted idea of what the iPhone is compared to other cell phone brands. But when we go to selective retention means that consumers are most likely to remember good points about the brand they favor and forget about the good points of the brand that they don't necessarily care about or that competing brand. So if I had an iPhone, I knew all about it, and I had a Google Pixel next to it, I knew all about that. Because I favored the iPhone, I'd often throw the Google Pixel out the window and not necessarily touch on it, or maybe my perception of it would be less favorable, even though I know both good points and they both weigh equal on good points. I'm still going to favor the iPhone. That's selective retention. So consumers worry that they will be affected by marketing messages without even knowing through subliminal advertising, and that's why we get this selective retention of what we choose and how we choose that. Next, we go on to learning, and learning describes the changes in an individual's behavior arising from experience. So the practical significance of learning theory for marketers is that they can build up demand for a product by associating it with strong drives, by using motivating cues and positive reinforcement. Much like Pavlov's experiment, he used a bell and a treat to make a dog salivate. So every time he heard the bell, the dog would salivate, whether he got a treat or not. Much like that, that's how learning is when we see advertisements with jingles and you find yourself sitting in class singing the jingle. You know exactly what product it is, and that's what they're doing is they're embedding that into your mind, and they're making you remember, and hopefully one day asking you to buy the product, and hopefully you will. And that's what learning does. It reinforces that into your mind, and hopefully it's a positive reinforcement. Those jingles can be quite annoying sometimes. Last but not least, we have beliefs and attitudes. And so belief is a descriptive thought that a person holds about something. So marketers are interested in the beliefs that people formulate about specific products and services because these beliefs make up the product and brand images that affect buying decisions. Like we said about word of mouth, if your belief doesn't shed a positive light onto a product, you're going to tell people about that. And marketers don't want that. They want to shed a positive light onto their product and to their brand. And we have attitudes. Attitudes put people in a frame of mind of liking or disliking things and moving towards or away from them. So that's the positive or negative reinforcement that you have on a product. So now that we understand the factors that influence us into buying, we're actually going to get into the buyer decision process. Once each person is unique on their factors of buying, correct? But that doesn't mean that the buyer decision process is any different. The buyer decision process is often similar or exactly the same for each person, although our factors are different. So this figure shows the buyer decision process consisting of 5 stages. The first stage is need recognition. The need can be triggered by internal stimuli or external stimuli. Internal would be your friends and family, your word of mouth, your influencers, etc. Your external stimuli could be what you hear on the radio, advertisements, billboards, etc. on that. But the need needs to be a high enough level to become a drive. It needs to become a motive for you, because if you don't have a motive or a drive to buy the product, you won't do it. So the second stage is information search. So this is when consumers can obtain information from several sources like personal, commercial, public, or experiential sources. This is information when we go look on Google and we say, what's the best phone of the year? And that's when we start looking at different articles and getting information from the web. And the next stage is evaluation of alternatives. This is how consumers process information to choose among alternative brands. This is when you start comparing the iPhone to the Google Pixel and understanding what are the pros and cons of each product and what's going to work for me and my lifestyle. And the fourth stage is the purchase decision. 2 factors can come between the purchase intention and the purchase decision. That's the attitude of others and unexpected situational factors. And then lastly, you have your post-purchase evaluation. This is probably the most critical part of the entire buyer decision process for a company. So determining the the post-purchase evaluation is determining if the consumer is satisfied with the product after purchasing. And are they going to continue a positive relationship with the business and the product itself? Oftentimes, if they are not happy with the product, we now have what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort caused by post-purchase conflict. What that is if you received a product and maybe it was broken or exploded, and you went to go, now you're unsatisfied with what the product looks like because it's not what you ordered. And then now on top of that, you go and ask customer service to reimburse you or to replace the product and say you have an even worse experience with customer service. Now we've created cognitive dissonance with the brand and the product. And now our businesses are trying to create a positive relationship with you, but they've totally ruined it at this point. So that's why the post-purchase behavior is so crucial, and it's a key to building profitable customer relationships. And a couple ways that businesses do this is one by tracking your package. Amazon does a great job of this, and the second you order your product, you know when it's ready to ship, and you can also sometimes check out where in the world your package is. If it's close to home, if it's going somewhere completely different, if it's all the way in China still, we don't know. But at least you have an ease of mind of knowing where your package is. Another is the Best Buy Geek Squad. Apple does this as well, but basically if you had a problem with your product, your phone, tablet, laptop, etc., and you needed it to get fixed, you can go into Geek Squad. Geek Squad can also come to you as well, and they can often look at your product and help fix the problem or sometimes even replace the product itself. And that's really creating a positive customer relationship because you understand that the brand, that company is there for you. They want to help you, and they're not there to leave you high and dry when your product may or may not work. So it's very crucial that we have a post-purchase behavior that's positive. So now we understand the factors that go into our buyer decision process and the buyer decision process itself. Now we have to understand the adoption of products. How are we essentially influenced at the very core of it? How did that product land at our doorstep? So people can be classified into each of these 5 adopter categories, and the curve illustrates that after a slow start, an increasing number of people adopt a new product. And so we're actually going to watch a video here about each of the 5 adoption levels. And if you just want to follow along, we can do that. Okay, now that we watched that video, we're going to understand the process that new products go through in the buyer decision process to make it through that innovation stage and hopefully into mainstream adoption stage. So at first we have the awareness. And this is a stage where consumers become aware of a new product but often lack information about it. Next, we have interest, and interest involves the consumer seeking information about the new product. Evaluation is when the consumer considers whether trying the new product makes sense. Trial is where the consumer tries the new product on a small scale to improve or estimate its value. And lastly, we have adoption, where the consumer decides to make a full and regular use of the product. Phones in sense of, or social media in the sense of the video we just watched is a great example of this, because we start out with a technological age where phones became a need for society essentially, and so they went through awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption and became fully adopted. But we see solar panels, we haven't necessarily come through this environmentally friendly and conscious world that's 100% that, whereas we're pretty much 100% technological for the most part. Solar panels haven't gotten there yet, so while they're still going through maybe the trial stage, we haven't gotten into full adoption to where it's become fully integrated into our society. Next, we have characteristics influencing an innovation's rate of adoption. And this is how we understand that a product gets into our society and how it's influenced into that sense. So a relative advantage, and relative advantage is the perceived marginal value of the product relative to the old. So is it better than the old? Obviously, probably to many people, the iPhone is better than a rotary phone. Next, we have compatibility. It's compatibility with acceptable behavior, norms, values, and so forth. Is the world ready for this? Is it ready to adopt this? And do we have the technology or understanding that it's going to make it into this world? Next is complexity, the degree to which the innovation is difficult to understand or use. And this is interesting in the sense of phones because while it may be easier for millennials and Gen Xers to understand phones, it may not be so easy for baby boomers to understand phones. And so that's why we often see that phones haven't been fully integrated into the lagging adopter area, and there are people that haven't fully adopted the product or are adopting a older version of the product, and that's why we see older generations with flip phones or sliders still. Next, we have divisibility, and that's the degree to which the innovation may be tried on a limited basis. And that's when essentially you would take a focus group of maybe 3 different types of generations, new and old, and tried it out with them to see how they understand the product and how they enjoy the product. And lastly, we have observability, and that's the degree to which the results of using the innovation can be observed and described to others. Is it easy to describe how to use a phone? Is it easy to describe without having a phone in your hand? And I think where we are now in society, that's true, is I could sit here and show you how to use a calculator or flashlight or add and delete apps on your phone, but I could also tell you that without having a phone in my hand, with knowing that you have background knowledge on what a phone is and looks like. So now we're going to our quiz time. We come to the end of the lecture and we're going to start our quiz. So you want to use your notes, and you can always go back in this video to look at certain slides or audio about the questions if you need. So let's get started. Now we come to the end of the lecture, and like I said in the beginning, we are coming back to our class exercise from the beginning. Now that you understand the factors that go into our buyer decision process and the buyer decision process itself, I want you to go back and redo your answers from the beginning. So think about the last time you purchased a big ticket item and answer the questions regarding your purchase experience. So describe the steps you went through during your buying process. List the factors, cultural, social, personal, or psychological, that influenced your purchase. And lastly, overall, what made you choose your product and why. Please be sure to use any terms or definitions you have learned throughout this lecture and be able to compare and contrast your answer before the lecture and after. And hopefully you learned something new. That's the end of today's lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. If any questions, please let me know, and I hope you learned lots. Thanks.